Leaving California. That seems to be the hot topic as of late amongst the YouTubers, at least the ones that I follow. Lots of people have talked about leaving California, and I'm not gonna lie, I've thought about it a lot myself. See, when I was applying for law school, I considered seriously leaving the state. Now, I've lived in California my whole life. I've gone through public school all through California, went to UCLA for undergrad, but when I went to apply for law schools, I applied everywhere, and I applied especially on the East Coast and places like Texas and Michigan. Ultimately, I decided that it was best for me to stay in the state, but I was very close to actually taking the switch and leaving California to get something new. I ultimately decided, you know what, I'm gonna stay in Los Angeles. I'm gonna go to USC Law School, but it stuck around my head and I've been thinking about leaving California really since then. And really, there's a lot of good reasons to leave California. Trust me, I get it. There's lots of people that make a compelling reason to leave California. They cite some of the following reasons. Really high taxes. There's no getting around it, but California has the highest income tax in the entire nation, and altogether, the highest basket of taxes of all states in the union. They have a very high sales tax. Some places it's as high as 10%. They have a very high income tax at 13.3%. They're talking about raising the income tax to 16.8%. They're talking about adding a wealth tax at 1% of all of your wealth above a certain level. They have a very high gasoline tax at 50 cents per gallon. They have property taxes, which may not seem very high at about 1% plus whatever your locality charges, but the homes are millions of dollars, so it ultimately comes out to tens of thousands of dollars every single year. There's just a whole lot of taxes, which frankly I'm probably forgetting about, and a lot of fees as well. There's just so many things that seem to take your money out of your pocket just living here. There's also very bad schools. All of those taxes seem to go somewhere, but ultimately don't make their way to a lot of these neighborhood schools. Now, I'm not saying that every school in California is bad. I went to schools and I had a great time going to public school in California, but I know that that's not the case for everybody. If you're just gonna look at the raw statistics, California ranks 46 out of 50 states in terms of their public schools, and that's just frankly unacceptable. We also have, no getting around it, a very serious homeless problem. Now, just looking at the raw data, California has 1/3 of all homeless people in the entire United States in California. And this doesn't make any sense because California also happens to be by far the largest economy in the entire United States and one of the largest independently in the entire world. But through poor management and poor decisions and ultimately poor fate of a lot of these people through mental health and drug addictions, there's just so many homeless people everywhere. It seems every single freeway underpass in a major city is lined with different forms of homeless people. Those that are suffering because of choices they made and those who are suffering because of things out of their control. This isn't a judgment on homeless individuals. I really have a tremendous amount of sympathy for them and I wish that they could get help. But the simple fact of the matter is other states have seemed to figure it out, whereas California is lagging behind. Traffic. It's also one of the most heavily trafficked areas in the country, and in fact, some measures the most trafficked in the entire world. Now, I lived in Los Angeles, and I could tell you without question, if you're trying to get somewhere around Thanksgiving, just forget about it. One time I went to the grocery store, which was probably a quarter mile away, and I'm not making this up, it took me an hour and a half to get back because it happened to be the day after Thanksgiving. That's the kind of traffic we're talking about. Not just, oh, it took me an extra 5 minutes here and there. Serious gridlock where it would take you a shorter period of time to actually walk or ride your bike than to drive your car. Then we have the wildfires, which seem to be a regular occurrence now. When I grew up, when I was young, occasionally there'd be a wildfire in some distant area and you'd hear about it, but it was never that big of a deal. Now it seems like we have a season. We have summer, winter, fall, and wildfire season. And that's unfortunate because it doesn't have to be that way. And I know this firsthand. I live near the Sierra Nevadas where my family has been fortunate enough to be able to go on vacation through a cabin they bought a long time ago. But recently, this last summer, we had the worst wildfires that I've ever experienced firsthand. We were terrified that it would wipe out this town that we've gone to my entire life, a place that I love dearly. And while the firemen actually were able to save large portions of the town, large portions of that town were actually lost. And it was absolutely devastating. And I couldn't help but feel a little bit disgruntled with the fact that all of those people up there, all of their homes, all the people who have livelihoods in that area were affected by something which I think we could mitigate in some way. Now, whether or not the fires were caused by increases in temperatures worldwide due to global warming, the simple fact of the matter is, even if that is true, which it seems like it is, that doesn't mean that we're just going to give up. We have to find a way to mitigate these fires in places where people live, because ultimately, we have problems everywhere in the state. The bottom half of the state gets almost no rain, but we figure out a way to actually give water to people. So the same thing should apply to the areas that are affected by wildfires. And lastly, we have regulations, and I'm not going to get into every single bit of regulations here, but the point of the matter is that regulations equal cost, and cost equals less value for the residents living there by and large. There are some great regulations in the state that help protect the air and the water and everything else, but there's just a lot of them which I can't help but think are just burdensome for absolutely no reason. Things that don't make sense to me and probably don't make sense to the average person living in this state either. And I'll give you a quick example. There are permits and fees when you build a home. Certain homes are not allowed to be built in certain areas, no matter how much demand there is for housing in that area. In San Francisco, for example, it costs more than $100,000 in permits and fees that you have to pay to the localities in order to even have the right to build a home on a piece of land. Now that's if you could find a piece of land to begin with. And even if you can find a piece of land to build on, chances are it's going to take you years and years and years to actually build that home, because people can sue you to stop it if there's an impact on the environment that wasn't studied through CEQA, and as a result, it drags out the cost, drags out the time, and makes it much less likely that the state actually gets all the housing that it really so desperately needs. Now, with all of that being said, it seems obvious why so many people choose to leave California, especially when this country has so many wonderful places to live, places that have no income tax, that have a very high standard of living, places like Florida, like Texas, like Nevada. There's lots of places people are moving to, and I totally get it. But at the end of the day, if I'm gonna be honest, I'm not quite there yet. I'm not quite ready to leave California. See, I'm a real estate professional and I travel all over, and I've seen places where I could see myself living because they're frankly beautiful, they have really low incidents of traffic, and they have very high standards of living, and I love that. There's so many great places I could list, but at the end of the day, I have a few reasons why I'm staying in California, at least for now. There are just tremendous opportunities in the state that I don't think are replicable elsewhere, at least for the moment. And what I mean by that is this is the biggest state in the union. It has the most people living in it, and it has huge amounts of wealth in this state. Now, just simple fact of the matter is, where the wealthy people are, oftentimes are the opportunities to actually make money as well. There's a reason why the companies start in places which are connected to capital and to people and to entrepreneurship, like California, like Silicon Valley and Los Angeles and other places like that. And that really is not going to be found in any other place in the nation at the level it's found here in California. Now, at the end of the day, my job as a real estate developer is to find properties that make sense to invest in and find investors to invest in those properties. And living here in California, I know there's a lot of people who would love to see the level of returns that we could achieve at our company in order to invest that money. But in order to invest that money, just a simple fact is you have to have the money. And here, there's frankly a lot of people with it. California also benefits from the best weather in the country outside of maybe Hawaii, but I personally like the slightly cooler climate here than in Hawaii. No offense to Hawaii, it's a great place. But here, the air is pure, the weather is terrific, especially in some of those coastal areas where it's basically 72 degrees the entire year. I remember when I lived in Los Angeles, I was sitting on the beach in January in a swim suit and just sitting there and looking over at the mountains that had snow on them. So within a single day, I could be in the water and 72 degrees in January and drive up and then go snowboarding later that day if I really wanted to. And really, the last reason why I'm choosing, at least for now, to stay in California really boils down to something that I know, no matter what, is going to be the most valuable thing to me. And that is the connection I have with the people that I love, my friends and family. Frankly, they're all here, and I'm not willing to move somewhere else and sacrifice my connections and closeness with those who live here just to save a few bucks or even make a few more along the way. I realize life is short, and trust me, I think about money pretty much all the time, to the great chagrin of my wife, but at the end of the day, I value the people that I love in this area more than any amount of money I can make elsewhere. Now, I'm not saying there's no amount of money that would change my mind. I mean, if California decided they wanted to take 100% of my income, then of course I'd be out of here. That would be ridiculous. But for right now, the marginal cost of leaving is greater than the marginal cost of staying. So that's a long way of saying that, yes, I wish California were better. Yes, I want California to be way better because it can be. And I hope to change it in some way, someday, somehow. But for now, I am going to stay here and I'm going to do my best to actually make it as enjoyable as I can, because on the whole, I still enjoy living here. Have any of you guys moved away from California, and do you think that I'm not seeing the full picture here? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear from all of you. With that being said, I'll see you next time. Thanks.